What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Wangzilla channel. My name is Will, and this will be a quick video. I recently picked up a welder, and I realized my welder plug, 240 plug that is, does not plug into the default 240 outlet that my builder put into my garage. When they asked me specifically what outlet I wanted, I said I wasn't really sure quite yet what I was putting in there, and so he put a dryer outlet. So I definitely wasn't planning on putting a dryer in my garage, since I do have a washer and dryer in my laundry room. But he went with the dryer outlet, so I'm going to replace it with a more of a welder outlet. And he did put a 30 amp in here. I'm going to replace it with a 50 amp, which is good for my panel, which is 40 amps. 40 or 50 amp panel can support the 50 amp plug, because there is no 40 amp circuit. So here's where we're at, and as you take a look here, here is my 4-prong 240 dryer outlet. I'm going to replace this, like I said, with the an outlet that will support my welder, that my welder can plug in and utilize. But with anything, before I go ahead and replace this, I wanted to really quick just double check the voltage on this outlet before and after I cut the breaker, because of course when I cut the breaker I want to verify that there is no power on this outlet, which would be unfortunate if I started tinkering with the wiring behind the outlet and it was still hot. So real quick, super easy to test these outlets. Right now it's still hot. Just kind of want to show what it should read in an on state at the circuit. But this is a simple multimeter, relatively inexpensive. I'll have some links below for some different multimeters. But for this one, since we're doing, we're going to be doing AC voltage, you want to go to the AC voltage setting. You want to make sure your leads are plugged in like this. Of course, the red one will be on the voltage here. This does voltage, resistance, frequency, and some other stuff. And then, of course, the black will be on the common. And this is a 4-prong dryer outlet. So you do have a ground, I believe this is neutral or common or something like that. I think it's neutral. And then you have 2 hots. And it should read, for a dryer outlet, 120, 240 between the 2 hots. And super simple, you want to make sure your range will support over 100 voltages. So if you notice the decimal point is moved over, so I can read up to 100. And then you want to just pretty much take your ground, put it in the bottom ground one, make sure it's on the metal tab, and then you want to take your red one here, and you want to read on the other metal tab. If I can aim it, and as you can see, 120 volts, telling me that this outlet is hot and working, which means my circuit is working. Before I go ahead and start ripping the outlet out, 120 from here, and then if you want to go across, it should read 240. Of course, you'll have plus or minus a couple volts. It's not going to be perfect. So I have about 242 across. So I know this circuit, the wiring and everything up to my circuit is good. And what I want to do is go ahead and shut the power off to the outlet. We'll go out to the circuit box, and then we'll flip the breaker, come back in here, test this again. It should read 0. We'll pull the panel off and get this outlet swapped out so I can start using my welder. So we'll go ahead and head outside real quick. Heading on outside to my electrical panel mounted on the side of my house. Right here typically is going to be near your meter, and then you got the panel box. These things are kind of tricky sometimes to get off, because of course, hey, it doesn't just come off. Notice you have to kind of yank it, and you have to kind of show you here. You want to push this little nub in and then pull the panel downward, and then it should come loose and you should be able to open the panel up. And then of course here is how mine is labeled. I guess whoever wires everything up may label this differently and whatnot. Now, garage 220, that is the outlet I've been working on. So I wanted to throw this off position here, which will be to the left on this side, to the right on this side will be off. So for me, flip it to off. And then you want to make sure your panel gets closed back up. Then the little nub comes back out. And of course you can't reopen it. Super secure. Go ahead and walk inside real quick. I'm back at the 240 dryer outlet that I plan on replacing. And as you can see here, I still have my multimeter set up in the same configuration as before. I'm going to go ahead and quickly just test these voltages, make sure there is no power here. Make sure it's not cross-powered from somewhere else, and in fact verify that we did throw the correct breaker. So once again, I'm going to test the ground to the hot, and we got 0 here. We'll switch it up, we'll do the other side, 0 there, and then we'll do from hot to hot, 0. So that confirms that this is no longer powered as we want. And I'm going to go ahead and get my replacement outlet that I plan on going with, which is it's going to be a 50 amp 3-prong, more like a traditional looking plug. This is what I'm going to be using my welder on. And yeah, I'll go ahead and grab that plug. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. This is the plug that I want to be going with for my welder. Right here. And you can see this, of course, does not fit the dryer outlet, hence the change. Now, you see here, this does indeed plug in as expected. And my circuit outside is a 40 amp circuit. This is a 50 amp outlet. There are no 40 amp outlets, but according to code and everything like that, you are allowed to use a 50 amp outlet such as this with your 40 amp circuit. Just you don't want to be running a consistent 50 something amps through this, because you will actually have problems and your breaker will flip. So my welder is rated for 30 amps, I believe, and it has a peak of 36. So both of those will be under this this rating on this outlet and on the rating on my circuit. So what we're going to do to replace the dryer outlet, now that it is powered off, is I'm going to have to use a flathead, and I'm going to pull this panel off. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my tools up, and I'll be back here in a minute. All right, just need a flathead for this one, but of course different panels and outlets will have different requirements. This being a dryer one and this specific brand and whatnot just requires a flathead. And I'm not going to video every single screw coming out, so I'll be back here with this panel off. All right, I have the screws removed from this ugly panel here, and bullet behind is the new outlet. See, pretty much the same exact, code standard outlet. You got, once you get the 4 flatheads or whatever yours is set up for, you have 4 Phillips heads here, and you're gonna have to go ahead and unscrew these, and then we can pull this out and take a look at the wiring. All right, I have these extremely long screws out, all 4 of them, and we can go ahead and get this thing out of the box a little bit so we can see what we're working with. Don't get too crazy with it, but she's a little twisted up. And if you want, you can go ahead and vacuum out your box if it's a total mess like mine is. And we'll swing around up here, and you can kind of see how these cords are orientated. Of course, you have the ground here, which goes to this bottom one, and then you have your red, both your hot ones here and here. Of course, the other hot one is black. These do look like a pretty nice thick gauge wiring, which is good. And then you have your neutral or com, whatever that one's called. So we're gonna go ahead and get these things unhooked from this 4-prong, and pretty simple. You should see these little screws in the back. You're just gonna go ahead and unscrew these on all 4 corners, and these wires should just slip right out. I'm gonna go ahead and get these unscrewed, and we'll come back here and take a look. I have these set screws here loosened up. The wire should just come out, as you can see here, and everything just slips out since the set through screws are no longer holding it in place. And you can see here the dryer plug has been removed, and we can do a quick side-by-side on the back with the 3-prong that we're moving to, and you can see the differences of just what it looks like in the back. Mostly the same thing, except of course being 3-prong, this only has the 3 set screws. I'm gonna go ahead and get my shop vac and kind of clean this up even though of course you won't see it once the plate's back on, but I like to keep everything looking nice. So I'll be back here shortly once this is cleaned up, and we'll get this 3-prong plug here wired up, and we'll get everything back in place. I have the little receptacle box here all shop vacked up, so it's a little bit cleaned up. It's not perfect, but yeah, so since we are going from this 4-prong setup, the dryer plug here, that has the 4 set screws in the back and the 4 cables that were going to it. And now that we're going to the 3-prong for my welder, it has, as you notice, only 3 cable connections in the back. And so we're gonna have to turn 4 into 3. And so how we're gonna do that is we are actually going to then delete this neutral wire, which is the white wire here. Your wiring may be different. Typically it is the white one though, and we're going to retain the ground and the 2 hot 120 wires. And so yeah, and we're going to hook it up pretty straightforward. As you can see here, we're going to put the ground is going to go into this set screw here. You can tell it's ground because it will actually line up with the ground plug, and it is that different color here with the green on, at least on this outlet, and you can tell it kind of goes here. These two, doesn't really matter which one of these go to which one of these. They're both 120. You just got to make sure that they do go to here and ground goes to this one. Do not mess that up, or you will have not a great day. And really the best way to connect this up, very straightforward. You're going to kind of just make sure these wires are not sprayed out everywhere. It's just going to go in here, so you have to loosen these up until you have a full window right here. You're going to move up the set screw with the Phillips head for this one, and then you'll put the appropriate wires in each one of these holes, and then you're just going to tighten down the set screw so it's nice and tight, but you don't need to hulk it out and completely disintegrate the wire threads. And then once you get all that in there, you're going to make sure the outlet is orientated correctly. You can tell by the lettering on this outlet here, and then you're going to want to maneuver it back in the thing. Now, to delete this neutral wire here, you can either cut off here so it's nice and flush with the sleeve here, and then tape it off with some electrical tape, or you can, if you have a twist cap, electrical twist cap, you can twist it on there, tape it on, and then you're just going to want to fit it back here so it's out of your way. I wouldn't recommend cutting it back here just in case you decide you want to go back to the 4-prong setup. So make sure it's still usable, and you don't cut it way up here, and then you're gonna have to feed more wire. And yeah, so this will move it out of the way. Just make sure it isn't not exposed and touching stuff and doing whatever. It's never good to leave exposed wires just hanging out. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of make sure these are good, and then we'll go ahead and loosen this up. We'll get this fit on here, and then we'll get this maneuvered in here. So first I'm going to go ahead and tape this off, cut it, and then yeah, we'll go from there. All right, I have some wire clips, strippers, and whatnot, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut this. Now, don't cut it too far, but otherwise you're going to have these little copper strands everywhere. This, at least cutting here, I'll be able to retain it all. It's kind of in a clump, and you need some pretty strong. This is, at least for mine, most wire is pretty thick. I'm not sure if this is 8 gauge. So yeah, you want to capture all this. You don't want this to just fall over the place because it can make kind of a mess. All right, so I got that cleaned up, and yeah, so now I'm just going to tape this off. I don't have any screw caps or anything like that, so I'm just going to tape it off, and then going to try to finesse it in the back here. I have my 3-prong here, and I've already loosened up these set screws here, but as you can see, you're going to tighten it to close it on the wire, and you want to loosen it up till it's just past the edge here. Don't go too crazy. These may just fall out. And yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and attach the ground first. As we mentioned, it will go to this one that's, you can tell here by this ground thing. So we'll go ahead and fit that in there. As you can see here. And then we'll go ahead and tighten it down. You want it tight enough so you can kind of hang the thing from it, but not so tight or you're annihilating or breaking the mechanism. So still not tight enough. All right, that feels pretty good. And the big thing is you want to be able to maneuver this around without it popping loose on you. And then you have it in the wall and it actually came disconnected or whatever. All right, so now we have the 2 hot ones. And once I get these in, tighten down, I'll go back and repass and tighten everything down. And these don't really matter where they go. And you just want to make sure you get everything finessed in here nicely. These are pretty thick wires, which definitely makes it a little bit more difficult. So of course my ground popped out, so I'm gonna have to put that one back in here. But here we go. And you just gotta make sure everything stays in place. These ones, since they are multiple strands of wire, are easier to screw down because they'll clamp in better than a solid piece like the ground wire. Kind of twist it so it'll coil back into the box. And as mentioned, you want it to be orientated like this. And once it's all tightened down there and you got the wires kind of figured out, you'll go ahead and try to feed this in there. And make sure you don't have your neutral or capped off neutral wire getting in the way. And you want to line it up with the outlet mounting holes like so. And of course this is thick wire because you're doing 240. So these things are a lot harder to maneuver if you're familiar with doing this install with standard 120. And at least I got one in place. Go ahead and get another one in. Hopefully I don't drop this thing. Hopefully you can see everything here, but this isn't too exciting. This is pretty standard stuff right here, just screwing the outlet into place. And there we go, that outlet's in place. I'm gonna go ahead and get the plate and get that lined up here as well. Now with the outlet in place, we can go ahead and put this fancy, or not so fancy, trim piece. And of course these holes will line up with these threaded holes that are on the outlet itself. Fairly universal. And just gotta make sure everything I'm not sure if it goes this way. No, obviously it doesn't go that way. And yeah, so it looks like it lines up relatively well. And go ahead. Kind of have a fear that I will drop this. But yeah, I don't need to record me figuring out how to get these screws in here without dropping them. Probably not too exciting, but I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, there's one. I'm gonna go ahead and thread these in, and then we'll jump back on camera here shortly, and then we'll get the circuit switched back on, and then we will go ahead and test this, and then we'll see if when I plug in the welder, if it powers on or not. Here we have the 3-prong 240 outlet in place. Everything's nice and solid. The cable's not, you don't want to have this thing kind of just half screwed in place, and if you plug a thing in, you pull it out and it's going to yank it out of place, whatever. So this looks good. We're going to head and walk outside and take a look at the breaker box, and then we'll go ahead and flip the breaker for this. All right, it's night out now. I've already eaten, so little time has passed. But as before, you kind of just want to get this thing and slide this panel down. And here's the garage 220. Keep it on it for a second to make sure it doesn't instantly switch back. So it seems like it's okay. And the box is closed back up, nice and tight. Of course, not super secure, but go ahead and head back in and we'll take a look. Back at the 240 3-prong outlet. I'm gonna go ahead and test this real quick before I plug anything into it, because of course, if it's wired up wrong and you plug in some expensive device into it before you test, you could risk a fire, blowing up your equipment, or yeah. So we'll go ahead and test it. And similar to the 4-prong, we're going to take the ground and we're going to insert it into the ground one, which is on this is the top now. The more of a circular looking outlet. Make sure it's on the metal, not the plastic. And then we're going to go ahead and touch the metal inside of the hot side here. So 120 is expected. And then we're going to go to the other hot side here, 120, if you can see that. And then we want to go between the two hots, the left and the right one. It should read 240. And make sure you touch the metals. And 240, 242, it's pretty standard. Plus or minus a couple voltage is good. So that tells me that we are good to go, and this was wired up properly. I'm gonna go ahead and get the meter out of the way, move my welder over here, and then we'll go ahead and plug it in and see if it powers on or not. All right, I moved over my new titanium welder here from Harbor Freight. Have not powered this on yet, but now that I have the outlet in place to match my 3-prong power cord that's on here, you want to make sure that you do have the 240 switch, which is right here. You want that to make sure it is in the 240 position if you're using 240 power. And then we'll go ahead and insert the plug here. And then we're going to go ahead and power it on. The switch is in the back on this specific welder right here. And it appears to have powered on successfully. So yeah, everything seems to be good to go with the installation of the 3-prong outlet. Really, it's more of a transfer from the 4-prong that we have here to the 3-prong. So everything's working as expected, and yeah, hopefully this helps anybody else who may have this similar requirement and want to go from a 4-prong to a 3-prong 240 for their welder or any other tool that requires it. And yeah, that'll wrap it up. Feel free to check out my other videos. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and let me know what else you'd like to see. Hopefully I'll have a ton more content coming here soon. Anyways, we'll wrap it up. Peace.